Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. I have sung the praises of the Criterion Channel streaming service many times in the past, and I'm going to do it again today because thanks to that service, I was able to watch a movie that I have heard about for a long time, but really had never expected to actually see a good copy of. And that is 1962's The World's Greatest Sinner. Now, I had tried to watch a version of this movie years ago that somebody must have, it had to be a multi-generational down VHS copy or something, because I couldn't make it more than 7 or 8 minutes into it. The audio was so bad. And having now watched the restored version, I understand why, because the audio is not particularly great all the time in the restored version, which is because it's very clear this movie was made by somebody who really didn't know how to make movies and was probably made for an almost zero budget. That's, from what I've read, that's what it was. From what you see on the screen, that's basically what this is. And the person who made it, the writer, director, and star, is an individual named Timothy Carey, who had been in some Kubrick movies, The Killing, Paths of Glory, has a really distinct-looking face and a, frankly, bizarre acting style. Not bad, but just very, very unique to this person. And I could not find any material on what the intent of this film was, because he wrote it, directed, and starred in it. So it's clearly a passion project, but I don't know what the intent was. So without having any knowledge of what drove this movie, because I've seen it described as an art house film and a black comedy and a couple of other things, it is sort of an art house film in that it's made by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but I don't think it's intentionally art housey the way something like the Forbidden Zone movie is. And I wouldn't call it a black comedy, because I think the comedy is really from the bizarre performances, but I chalk that up to the fact that there weren't really great actors in this. Not because it's supposed to be funny. I don't think it is. I feel like, honestly, the closest analog to this movie that I could use as a comparison point is probably Kevin Smith's Dogma, but without the intentional humor that Dogma has. What this movie really feels like to me is Timothy Carey fictionalizing a legitimate personal struggle with faith, a crisis in belief in God that he felt he needed to make into a movie. Because the basic premise is he plays an insurance salesman who one day realizes he's dissatisfied with the way his life is going and thinks that there are things wrong in the world, and becomes what starts as a small-time kind of rock and roll preacher racket that then blows up and gains a massive following. And, I mean, that's not really a spoiler. That's what the movie is. That's how it opens. It jumps right into it. And again, at no point did I really feel like this was supposed to be a parody or it was supposed to be making fun. It felt like, just based on the ending, too, and I'm not going to give it away. I'll talk about it on Friday, and I'll have clips, and you'll hear what I'm talking about in terms of the very unique acting style. But this really feels like somebody who, either at the time the movie was made or at some point prior, had a crisis of faith and didn't know whether he believed in God anymore, and was working through it in writing this movie, or felt like he needed to make a movie depiction of what that struggle was. I don't know what else it could be. I just don't feel like, because it feels too honest. This doesn't feel like, unless this is such an expertly done black comedy, but I don't think so. I really don't. I'd actually be curious what other people think. I've read some reviews, and none of them came across as thinking it was a comedy either, but I've seen people refer to it that way, so I don't know if they were projecting onto it or what. It's a really interesting movie. It's not a particularly well-made one, so I'm not going to pretend it is. Again, I to some degree, I don't like to compare it to Dogma, because I think Dogma is actually a well-made, it's probably Kevin Smith's best film. I've said that before. This is not that well-made, but it does have something in it, and I feel like that something is the sincerity. I feel like there is a sincere expression of something inside this, and that's really the reason I would tell you to watch it. And unfortunately, the only way I know that you can watch it right now is on the Criterion Channel. I would not try to find it anywhere else, because the only other copies I've seen are terrible. And again, having watched the restored film, I can see why. They just did not have a lot of money, clearly, to make this movie. Or maybe people were like, this is too weird, we're not making it. But whatever. I do think it's worth watching. I think it is an interesting film if you look at it as a sincere kind of expression of something. So again, it's from 1962, The World's Greatest Sinner. As far as I know, it's only on the Criterion Channel, but if you have the ability to see it, then I would say it's worth watching. You might not go back to it ever again, but it's worth watching once. Later.